morning. And thank you for this opportunity so I can remember. Because in reality, there's no such a thing as me teaching anything to anybody. There's only one. It's only a space that has been created by that, capital letter, to somehow remind itself of who he is or who we are or what it is or whatever you want to call it, which the word that we usually use is to remember that who we are is love. However, love in the context of A Course in Miracles is about oneness. It's not about feelings. It's not about I feel love towards you, meaning that you're more special than him. It's about the recognition that all that I am is love and there's nothing else. But because I believe to be a separate entity, of course, I have all these blocks or these ideas. And the Course, what allows me to do is to look at them. That's what A Course in Miracles is, a course about looking at the obstacles. For the separate self is not the most comfortable thing, because the separate self is hanging on to the obstacles to hang on to the idea that is a separate self. You see? And what we're going to do here today is that we're going to explore. You see, we're going to explore together so that we can look at the dynamic of how the ego thought system operates, and then we can at least look at it and see the way it operates, and then we can allow ourselves to that, capital letter, to do the work. So we don't have to do the work. That's the easy part. The work that we're doing constantly without realizing is hanging on to it. And that hurts. But somehow, I still want to feel hurt. Because somehow there's this fear underneath, right? And that fear is not even real. So this is a very, 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 very curious thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish some sort of like a groundwork just to, when we begin to share, which is basically mostly, hopefully, that would be what I would prefer, is an interaction rather than me to you. Because the theory in reality is very simple. As a matter of fact, it's very obvious. And that's why it's very easy to overlook. As a matter of fact, that's what we have done. Overlooked it over and over again. So this is just what I call the metaphysics or the teaching or whatever. First, we're going to begin with this. What I'm going to share with you never happened. That's the first thing. What I'm about to share with you never happened. But it appears as if it happened, because it appears, observe that I'm using the word appears, I'll use it a lot. It appears as if I am here talking to you. And if you're there, listening to me. That's part of the grand illusion. That give testimony to the belief that this is really happening. That's what the Course states very clearly, that the ego will ask questions that this Course cannot answer, because they seem like a question, but in reality they're not. They're just an affirmation of something that never has occurred. However, having said that, this is going to be very simple. I want to keep that in mind, because I know some of the questions will always rise. As a matter of fact, all the questions will always rise from the part of the mind that believes the lie. You see? And because this is where we think we are, it appears as if we're sort of remembering. Oh, I see what's going on here. Eventually, if you caught it, there will be no more questions to ask. You would go, oh, I was going to ask a question, but I know what the answer is. As a matter of fact, there's a lady who, or someone, I think so, made a comment, because people tend to ask me a lot of questions, because the ego wants to find an answer that suits what he wants to hear, to keep holding on to its identity. And the person would say, I don't like reading Nick anymore because he always says the same thing. Well, that's exactly what the Course does in thousands of pages, telling you the same thing circular over and over again, until maybe at some point you go, got it. So, God is all that there is. And that's why A Course in Miracles is established as a non-dual teaching. Non-dual means not two, it means one. And even the word one, it's something that we have to be careful of, because the word one implies somehow an objective quality of one. So in reality, all that there is. But again, that's where the language is going to limit us. And we're going to use the best of our language just to see what happens. Okay? So, there's only God, there's only oneness, there's only peace, there's only joy, there's only that which is. Okay? Within that, all that there is, it appears a thought crosses that space. Okay? A thought. We call it a tiny mad idea. Just a thought. A thought that it's a very innocent thought. It's like when you go to sleep, right? At the beginning, you feel that you know that you are you in your body, closing your eyes, and you're getting comfortable. But between that space and finally getting caught in the sleep, in the dream, there's sort of like a transition. There has to be something that supposedly projects the dream. You see? You don't know exactly what it is. You don't fabricate it. You don't know. You simply just something that appears to happen. First you're in bed. You're getting comfortable. You still know that you're you. That's the only one. And then somewhere along the lines, whoop, you're in a sleep. Right? And in that sleep a dream appears, supposedly. So that transition process, well, this is supposedly the appearing thought that appears to have occurred, but it never did. Right? So, in this thought that appears to occur, this is in any way, in any sense, what we refer to as the thought system of separation. A Course in Miracles refers to as consciousness. Right? I'm going to use the word mind as a way of saying that, there's the mind, there's God, and there's the mind. Right? You can use the word consciousness. The reason why they call it consciousness, the first separation, is because when consciousness seems to appear, consciousness means that it has to be conscious of something. That's what consciousness is. I'm conscious of. For me to be conscious of something, there have to be a separation. Otherwise, there's nothing. That's why the Course refers to as perception. Perception can only exist when there's an object and a subject. Otherwise, it could not exist. In oneness, perception doesn't exist. What does that mean? In oneness, it's all that there is. But in perception, I can perceive a woman. You see? And I can perceive an eye that seems to be looking at a woman, or a chair, or a camera. You see? This is the world of perception. Right? So we also call it the world of the ego. That's what the ego is. The ego is really a thought in the mind. Now, in the moment that this appearing thought appears to show up, it's like when you see your son or your daughter is about to fall asleep. In the moment you see them going like this, you go, wait. Does that make sense? So in the moment that it appears as if the thought of separation has occurred, which meaning that the ego thought system is born, right? In that moment, the answer was given. Those of you who are familiar with the Course in Miracles, you know what that answer is? Holy Spirit. A Holy Spirit is nothing but a memory. See, this is a belief that I'm separate from everything. This is just a reminder that this is not true. That's what the Holy Spirit is. Right? So, as you can see, where is that the ego is undone? In the mind. All it has to do is just, if in the mind the decision is in favor of the Holy Spirit, all this stuff disappears. We're done. Now, what happens? Just for the sake of, again, language, which is very limiting, because I'm going to give ego qualities as if the ego does something, but the ego cannot do anything because the ego doesn't exist. But we're still on the limitations of language. What the ego does is says, if I let the mind choose this thought system, I'm gone. So you know what it does? It projects. It projects a dream. The only purpose of the dream is to keep the mind distracted from itself and put its attention somewhere else. In that dream, the ego thought system projects an I, see, a body, right? And now the mind is distracted with the dream, identifying itself with a person, whatever I think I am. You see? So the purpose of the dream, the purpose of the person, is really to keep myself or keep the mind distracted from it. That's why A Course in Miracles never asks you to do anything in the world, because all that it will do is keep the mind distracted from truth. That's what the Course always tells you: seek not to change the world, but to seek to change your mind about the world. Everything I do in the world is just keeping the mind distracted. That's what the Course is always bringing you back to silence, and it brings you with lessons like nothing I see means anything. Which you could say nothing I feel means anything. Nothing I hear means anything, because there's no one hearing, there's no one seeing, there's no one feeling, because there's no one here, because there is no dream. See how simple it is? So, A Course in Miracles, what it does is that within the dream, where the mind is identified with, like right now, my mind is identified with this character called Nick Arandes. And I guarantee that if I ask you, what is your name? You will say, my name is. But that is not who you are. That's just a label you're placing on the idea that you're a body, which reinforces the idea that you're something separate. Of course I'm separate from them. Look at that. He's over there, I'm over here. But in reality, who I really am, who he really is, who all of us are, is the oneness. You see? So the only way I can actually allow myself to be consciously aware of that is not something I can do, because as long as I'm identified with this, I'm already identified with the ego. It doesn't matter. But I can withdraw the meaning to everything in recognition that I know nothing, and I allow the Holy Spirit settle in the mind and takes care of all the work. So, how the Holy Spirit does that? Well, 2,000 years ago, for the sake of language and for the sake of the story, showed up as a man named Jesus. Jesus was a figure in the dream that it was used to try to convey the mind, not the person, the mind, that it is all a dream. Right? Now in 2018, it's showing up in the form of a little book. It's called A Course in Miracles. Now, this is where I have seen all the confusion with the Course, and that's why a very simple teaching, it appears to be very complicated. A Course in Miracles is not talking to you as a person because you're not here. And if you don't have that clear, this course is going to be completely confusing. Because you're going to try to apply the Course in Miracles to the world. A Course in Miracles is talking to the mind that is dreaming you. That's why you have to get out of the way. But everything I see, everything I hear, everything I feel, all it does is bring the attention back to this I that I think I am. And everything that happens in my world. Somebody robs me, somebody hurts me, all that kind of stuff. All that it does is keeping the mind distracted to this I. And this is where A Course in Miracles says, you don't even have a clue what's going on, but I can help you if you choose me. And the way I choose the Holy Spirit thought system is not doing anything special in the world, is simply withdrawing my attention in that space of silence. The miracle does nothing, simply be still and trust. And that's how I let go of all my judgment, meaning that the judgments of the ego through this character, and I trust. And that's how the work is being done, and I don't have to do anything. Now, look at the beauty of this. I'm talking about choosing between the Holy Spirit thought system and the ego thought system. I got great news for you. You cannot choose between two thought systems, because there are no such thing as two thought systems, because the thought system of the ego is not true. You're like, what the hell this guy's talking about? In other words, I don't choose the Holy Spirit thought system because the choosing of the Holy Spirit thought system would imply that there is an ego thought system. And now I'm choosing between the two. I already chose the ego thought system. You know how I know that? Because I'm here. Because I think I'm a body. Because I think that there's a world. That implies I already chose the ego thought system. But now that I'm in this mess, what do I do? And the Holy Spirit says, I need do nothing. What it means, I don't choose the Holy Spirit thought system. I simply surrender to what is, and in that surrendering to what is, I am no longer holding on to the ego thought system, and that is the equivalent of choosing the Holy Spirit thought system. That's why A Course in Miracles is so simple. Not easy, because there's a lot of resistance. All we're going to do in the time that we're going to spend here together is looking at the resistance. Dynamics are simple. What else do I have to tell you? But you're going to see the questions that are going to come up, thinking that the questions are coming up from you, but in reality they're not coming from you, because a character in a dream has no autonomy. You know? So what the ego thought system does is that he says, okay, what can I do to make sure that I keep holding on to my identity, right? So what he does, he takes A Course in Miracles and begins to teach it, and now this character that is non-existent, in order to not let it go of it, it has a brand new label, you know? And the label is, I'm a teacher. But the Course states very clearly that teaching is to demonstrate. And I'm always demonstrating whether I believe in the ego thought system or the Holy Spirit thought system. And I will give an example. When I started practicing A Course in Miracles, there was a study group that I really, I went to. It was closer to home, and I really enjoyed, because in my ego, I love to share how much I knew the theory of this course. Oh, what? How special I was, right? And of course, in theory, it could be said that the person who was facilitating the course had a confusion in levels. You know, he had these two levels confused. So he tried to apply the course to the world, but sometimes with all that kind of stuff. So eventually, when I would see that, what would happen is all this anger was coming up in me, right? And here I am defending the truth, meaning making the error real. So, in A Course in Miracles, it talks very clearly that teaching is not something that happens between two, because there are no two. Teaching implies that in every moment I am choosing whether I believe in the ego thought system or the Holy Spirit thought system. Well, even if in theory, I'm going to say hypothetically speaking, even if in theory I got the Course's theory right, in that scenario, I was not teaching A Course in Miracles, because I was demonstrating the opposite. And in that sense, even though that he may not have the theory correct, his attitude was demonstrating more what it's like to be in line with the Course in Miracles teaching that I was. So what happened? You asked me why Nick Arandes is here in England sharing this or whatever. It is not that I have a purpose or anything like that. It's because this is what is happening. And I cannot control it. But in this happening, which served me very well to deepen into the understanding and the simplicity of the Course, it also has been a journey where I have contacted with all my anger. And I'm not saying that everything is gone or not. I don't know what's underneath the carpet or whatever, but I know that my only function is to forgive, so I got that clear, right? And so I found myself judging and pointing fingers at who was doing the course right, who was doing it right or wrong, and people would come up to me with questions because this is teacher saying this or whatever. And it was always activating all this anger in me, because that was my way of making the error real. And it's like the Course is telling you, the error never happened. What do you mean it never happened? Look what these people are doing. You know? So, right now, if you ask me, what is the only thing I really love, the only thing I desire, if you want to call that word, is to know myself, is truth. That's about it. If it so happens that for some reason I find myself sharing this because this is what's taking place, I'm going to trust this is the curriculum that life is choosing me so that I can remember who I am. Because I know this may sound a little selfish, but I'm not doing this for you because there's no one there. I'm doing it for me. Because as I remember who I am, then I cannot help but to remember who you are. You see? But if I think I'm doing it for you, guess who I'm identified with? And then it's a never-ending circle because I'm going to identify with a thought system that says that I am here, that I have a purpose here, meaning that I want to hold on to my desire to feel special. What does it mean feeling special, feeling separate? Not from others, from the source. But if I choose and allow the teaching of the Course to the mind that is dreaming me, and I simply observe, because I cannot do anything else anyway, we can just observe. If you think you have free will, you can just observe that is one of the huge traps that guilt uses to make you feel bad or good or whatever. You know? We're here because this is what's happening. Don't ask me why this is happening, but this is happening. But in the end, it's happening because the mind is using this context where appears to be X amount of people to remind itself that it's mind and not personality. That is love and it's not fear. That is truth and it's not a lie. That is oneness and it's not separation. This is the context. This is the game that the mind is playing with itself. And this is pretty much what I have realized, that the more and more I keep reminding myself of where the Course is leading me to, which is to remind myself that I am mind and not separate identity or whatever. To be honest with you, everything it leads me back to silence. Literally, to silence. I mean, I can probably would say, if we could stop right now and we stay in silence, it's really, there's nothing else to do or to say. What happened is you might get upset because you paid for it. So. But you know what I'm saying? So these are the basics, and I'm just monitoring myself constantly to observe, if there's fear coming out of me, or if I'm identified with the kind thought system that we all share as well. And we can talk about theory and stuff, but I think this pretty much sums it up. Now, what we can do, if you're up to it, is just, you can ask any question or anything, whether it's about the Course, whether it's about the theory of it, or a situation that might be happening in your life, so you can see that the only problem we'll have, and listen carefully, we think we have so many problems, we only have one. That's what the Course states. It's only one problem, one solution. The only problem, I think I'm a body. The solution, remember your mind. But I think I have many problems. I have financial problems. I have health problems. I have relationship problems. No, this is all stuff that is happening in the dream, but you are the dreamer of the dream. That's why the Course states clearly that the miracle doesn't do anything. It simply reminds the mind reminds who's the dreamer of the dream. When you're aware that you're the dreamer of the dream, then all of a sudden all this stuff is irrelevant. However, since we appear to be here, is it possible that things could change or whatever? Well, we never want to bring the mind here, because if you bring the mind here, you're going to be lost 100%. But changes could take place too, But let's see how that operates, so that then we can at least observe how the ego thought system operates. The ego thought system wants only one thing, that you believe that you're that person. And if you believe you're that person, the ego is happy, because it keeps you mindless. And we're going back to mindless, to mindful. The reason, however, is that I am afraid of letting go and choosing the Holy Spirit thought system, because if my identity, and I saw your hand, I'll go with you in a minute. My identity, which is a person, thinks that if I choose the Holy Spirit thought system, means I'm going to die. Well, in a sense, you're going to die. Your identity is going to die. And that identity is what liberates you, because all your fears are surrounded by your identity. When you let go of the identity, then you are free. Yeah, you might still be in the body for the time being, but now you're going to be what is called happy. Meaning not happy laughing or something, just being aware. There's a line in the Course, which is the lesson that says there's a way of living in the world that is not of the world. You know, where your mind is clear, your eyes. This is what the Course is. This is the practicality of it. Don't get caught up in that if you do the Course and you forgive, you're going to die and you're going to return back to God. Don't worry about it. No. That's too scary for you right now. But be aware of the promise. The promise is that if you can choose the right-minded thinking, then you're going to be living a happy dream. Happy dream doesn't mean things may change or not. That doesn't matter. Who cares? It's that you're happy because you're consciously aware. You know? That's what is called the peace that passes understanding, not the peace that takes place when things go my way. That's another way of manipulating the dream. Is to be conscious that you're the dreamer of the dream. Does that make sense? Now, you had a question?
Yeah, I wrote this sentence the way I understood what you said. So we have to seek not to change the world, but only change what we see in the world.
Change our mind about the world.
I thought it's a good thing to change the world, because, you know, when I see like a great injustice, racism, I think there was a racism, and people who changed that, they done good things by changing the world, yeah? Now they I don't know, they are like 40 years old men getting married in some Arabic countries to 7 years old girls. Mm-hmm. I think it's good to change things which are creating pain. Why we have to leave the world the way it is? It's just so much cruelty there.
Okay. How are you feeling right now? Honestly.
I feel very happy that I said this out loud, because I thought it just doesn't make sense to me.
Of course, makes. Are you at peace right now with what is, or how do you feel right now? What is it? What is that you're feeling right now?
I don't like everyone looks at me. I don't.
Oh,
like
don't worry about it.
I like to say the questions and like people don't look at me.
Got you. Okay. Well, here's what we're getting to, and let's use, for example, am I feeling angry when I'm really trying to state that point? You know, am I feeling like anger is coming up, right? And of course, it makes perfect sense. Look what this guy is saying. You know, so. What the Course is inviting me is not so much about what do I do in the world, because if you are in a state of fear, whatever you do will come from that space and may not be of much help. However, if I can be consciously aware that whatever scenery that appears to be taking place in the world is not really taking place in the world, because there is no world. There's only my belief in myself as a separate entity and my belief in that there is a world. That's a huge trap, you know. I'm already caught up and I cannot get away from it. So, do I say if there's, let's say, racism, don't do anything? No. I didn't say that. I said, racism appears to show up, which is a scene, like a scene in a movie, right? Sometimes it's racism, sometimes it's baptism. It doesn't matter. It's a different scene. I feel angry, right? That anger that I feel has nothing to do with the image that is taking place in the world. That anger that I feel is simply a residue of my feeling of impotence, because I feel that I'm a separate entity when who I really am is the wholeness itself. But because I have ignored that completely, I'm bringing my attention to these different scenes in the world to somehow hold on to that anger. You know? So now, in that moment, it's not about what do I do in the world. It's about what do I do with my mind. Because if in the mind, I can look at that scene, I can trace back the cause, which is not here, is here. I realize I'm feeling angry. You see, you place a great argument, because that's how the ego does. The ego plays a wonderful argument. I mean, how can I not feel hurt if my a wife who I gave her everything, she ran out with my neighbor? You see? I mean, the logic is perfect. What we're doing is bringing back, reversing cause and effect. We're bringing back the real cause. The cause is unconscious guilt, the anger that is in me, that I could not see it unless my wife would live with somebody else. You see? When I bring the attention back to cause, that's when I ask for help. Asking for help, when I said choosing the Holy Spirit, I said again, is basically surrendering. I don't know why that is happening. I don't know what can I do about it, but I surely know how I'm feeling because I'm thinking that this is who I am and this world is my reality. Now, look at the paradox of it. When I surrender to what is, and my attention is no longer in the racism or the baptism or the pain or the pleasure, it doesn't matter. Now I'm bringing myself back to love. And from that place of love, if there is something that I could do about it, I will do something about it. But it's no longer charged with the idea that something has to change here, because nothing has to change here. And that's why the Course says, seek not to change the world, seek to change your mind first. So when your mind is changed, then whatever you do in the world will come as a result of an expression of love and not fear. You see the difference? I cannot put out the fire with gasoline. And that's what we do when we go with that anger trying to save. I can put out the fire with water. But for me, first I have to get rid of the gasoline in me. So that's why you asked me a wonderful question, but I was not concerned about the question. That's how the ego distracts us, trying to make scenarios to see, but how about this? That doesn't matter. I just wanted to bring you back of what you're connecting with. You're connecting to a belief there, that belief that if I don't let go of it, then of course I'm going to feel that way. So I'm in no shape or form would say that the Course in Miracles is asking you to let racism be, and not at all. If anything, this is the most loving teaching I ever met, because it's bringing me back to my right mind. And then, if I can do something about it, I'll do something about it. But in reality, there's nothing I can do about it, because these are images that I'm creating in the mind just to make this present moment where nothing is really happening, to take this present moment and make it more dramatic. You know? This is the dynamic. What we're doing now is that to bring myself back to this space so that I can remember who I am. And as I remember who I am, then the world I will function in the world like I'm functioning right now. But if there's something I can do, it'll be done. Because in the end, it's not me who does anything. Everything is done through me. I'm not even breathing. I'm being breathed, so to speak. That's what I was stating, that if you ask me why am I sharing the teachings of A Course in Miracles, I don't know. I was a stand-up comedian for 15 years. I had a career. And I thought that I had all these things that I wanted to do, and then my whole life collapsed. And that's what the Course is like, saying, okay, well, it's ready now to return home, to remember this. And that's how the world ceased to be a distraction, you know?
So what you're saying, the problem is that, I choose something which makes me angry, instead of looking at my anger in my, mind, I just get distracted and look at reasons to feel angry?
Okay. When I think that something makes me feel angry,
yeah,
I'm already assuming that the cause of my anger is outside. Like and that is exactly, because the anger is coming from you, it's not coming from there. And how you can tell that? So you realize that it's nothing. Have you been in a situation where 3 people watch the very same scenario and each one has a different reaction? Well, absolutely. That's the proof. If it's true that scenario is the cause of the anger, all of 3 should feel angry. But yet this one doesn't feel anger. How come doesn't feel anger? Because his interpretation of that image is different than this one. So what I'm inviting you is to look at the interpretation that you're giving to the scene, because that is what's causing your anger. It's not the scene. So first I have to take responsibility of my interpretation. Once that is clear, then I will do what we'll do. But it's not because I will do, because I don't do anything. That's what will be done, This is, again, the idea that I have free will, that I can choose A or B. In reality, A or B are choices, and what is going to determine if I choose A or B is the thought system I'm identified with. If I'm identified with fear, probably I may find myself choosing B. If I'm identified with love, I might find myself choosing A. But it's not Nick Arandes who consciously chose either or. Nick Arandes is simply an instrument through which, if I surrender to love, I trust that whatever choice that needs to be made will be the right one. And this is part of the practice, because there's a lot of reasons for me to feel all sorts of things. But the moment I keep deepening into the understanding and the practice, then that's when I can take complete responsibility. That's why lesson number 5 in the course is so beautiful. I'm never upset for the reasons I think. You know? I'm never happy for the reasons I think. You see? Because if I think I'm happy because things went my way, then I'm giving the world, the illusion, cause, power, and I think I'm the effect. So we're becoming very vigilant now. Observe, okay, look how whoa, for a moment I thought that is what made me feel this good or this bad. And now everything begins to wither away. And then what is remain is the background, meaning the peace that has been there, that has always been there, that nothing that happens in the world can affect it. And that's the trick. That's the goal, if anything. And it's not a goal that you're getting to. It's an awareness that continues to rising up as I continue to surrender to what is. And that's the simplicity of the process. All I'm doing is a constant surrender. Thought comes up, I have no clue what they mean. Only when I think I know what they mean is when I get into the problem. Situations in the world occur, I don't know why it occurred, and this is what's happening. Well, because if someone is identified with the thought system of fear, well, that's going to be the behavior, it's obvious. But what I don't want to do is finding myself identified with their thought system by judging them. That's a trap, you know? So yeah, I see somebody doing something not very kind, for example. Well, that person is doing that not because he's a bad person, it's because it's identified with the ego thought system. If I judge that person, or I condemn, put it that way, I don't have to agree, don't get me wrong, I don't have to agree with the behavior, but if I find myself judging, that's what causes my anger, you know? I don't have to agree with what people may do or say with certain things, but if I find myself feeling something, that's what I have to look into. That's the work. Because that person, if it's part of the only one mind that it is, I'm really judging myself. I'm not judging others. There's no others. See the trap? And that's why it's there's a line in the Course that talks about how much, he says, I have warned you of how much attention you put on your ego thought system and how little you put on the Holy Spirit thought system. And this is what it is. When things get very, very, I mean, when you see right there, I mean, I mean, the most, you know, I don't know what the word is. I know it in Spanish, it's not coming out in English, you know. The most distressful thing, of course, there's a tendency to believe all that is coming up, and that's what the Holy Spirit says, I need do nothing. First, bring your mind back to presence. And then, from that place, trust whatever it is that you will find yourself doing. You know, so I'm observing now the character Nick Arandes living a life where it appears that he has a girlfriend, where it appears that he's in England talking to people, where it appears that he has moments of anger and moments of contentment. But now I constantly be aware that this is just what is happening. That has nothing to do with me, capital I. You know? And that's as a word. That's what it's called, I would say, living in a constant state of forgiveness. If the word forgiveness is confuse you, it's in a constant state of innocence, meaning in a constant state of I don't know. You see? That's how I can allow the right mind do its work. Otherwise, I'm getting in the way. Anybody else? We got 3 hours to kill, so better come with something.
Can I ask you, so if the anger appears,
yes,
and I'm thinking, oh, that situation is impinging on me, and that's the cause of it.
Exactly.
And so I'm looking at myself, and I see that reaction, and I want to be free, right? I want to be free of the upset.
Gotcha.
regardless of what's going on around me.
Of course.
So I would pray and ask the Holy Spirit for, okay, help me to look at the cause of it. And I have no clue what the cause is. I mean, my
Of course.
subconscious, somewhere hidden away, I can only see this upset. So I say, like, I don't know what it's all about, but I'm just willing to drop it.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Okay.
Because the whole process,
Yeah.
I don't want to intellectualize it too much, but
Which-
sometimes I feel like I might be missing maybe something.
Exactly. I don't want to intellectualize it too much, but wanting to know the cause is already intellectualizing it. So I'm in a loop, I'm in a trap. You see? Let's go now to the simplicity of it. A feeling shows up. Don't label it anger. It's just a bubble that is showing up, right? When I ask the Holy Spirit to change that, I'm already in resistance to it. Therefore, what I'm doing is holding on to it even tighter. Because the Holy Spirit or love doesn't change anything. The love, if you know what love is, embrace everything. So the problem is that I'm having a feeling, and because I think that I am this person, now I'm attributing that feeling to me. And it doesn't feel good. And I don't want this feeling to stay there. And all of that is keeping me trapped in the belief that I'm a person. You see? But what would happen if a feeling shows up for how long it wants to stay, and I stop judging it, either good or bad? The feeling goes away, maybe, but I'm at peace with the feeling. And that's what we want to get to. That's what I said, that to me the most powerful prayer is, God, don't teach me how to change this. Teach me how to be at peace with this. See, now those feelings has no power over you. This is the process that is the most difficult on A Course in Miracles, because we somehow want to change something. I want to change how I feel. I want to change my reality. Again, thinking that this is my reality. I want things to be different. And we try to call the Holy Spirit so he can somehow get into the dream, meaning that I want him to believe what the ego believes. And I want him to come into my dream and change it. And that's not inner peace. That's manipulation. Inner peace is the awareness that no matter what takes place, it has nothing to do with me. And that's how, paradoxically, the feeling continues its journey. You know? Now I don't judge myself for feeling angry, because then the ego thought system again takes this teaching and says, oh, no, you shouldn't feel anger. No, there's nothing in the Course that says you shouldn't feel anger. It says you don't justify it. You know? So as long as I believe myself to be a human being, all these things are going to show up. But the more I kept allowing myself to just be, then when before, whatever those feelings used to be an obstacle, now it's sort of like, oh, look what is showing up today. You know? And that's how I allow it to be. In other words, the sky is not in any way, shape, or form affected by the clouds. Only when the sky believes it's a cloud, that's when all the problem comes in. But if the sky steps aside and allow it to be, well, the cloud comes in, the cloud shows up. That's why many times we try to change our thoughts. You don't control your thoughts. They show up. And if you don't believe me, try it. You know? They show up. They show up. And I have a choice to judge them, meaning that choosing the ego thought system and trying to change them. Or I can simply choose the Holy Spirit thought system and do what the Beatles says. They were the best thing that they ever said. I mean, I think that if you want to get the Course in Miracles, just listen to the Beatles. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom. That's all A Course in Miracles is trying to tell you. Literally. But I don't want to. But to me, it's scary. Because if I let go of my anger, who I am. If I let go of whatever it is that I'm identified with, who I am. I am afraid of surrendering to the peace of God, and I rather hang on to who I am in the fear of what might happen if I let go of who I am. And you know what the joke is? I don't even know what might happen. I am afraid of what may happen when I don't even know what that is. You see? But the beauty of it all is I don't need to know what happened. Whatever I think it's going to happen is a story that the mind is making up to keep me attached to this idea that this is who I am. Because if you look at any experience right now, all your worries and fears are nonsensical because nothing is happening. But when you begin to let your mind run and begin to project what it could happen, that's when all the worry comes in. And it all comes from the belief that I'm a body, because in the end, all I'm afraid of is death. But death is not existence, because this is not who you are. Only when you believe this is who you are, right? But if I begin to surrender completely to what is, that's when A Course in Miracles states very clearly that it says in one of on the text, you still do not trust me enough. Now, please me, I know how to say it in Spanish because that's the one that I've been using a lot since I've been speaking mostly in Spanish. But it's something along the line says, you still don't trust me enough yet. Okay? But this trust in me will continue on as you keep choosing me as your only teacher rather than the ego. And the way you know that the right choice is choosing me are the results. Now, be careful here. Because this is where many times lines in A Course in Miracles, the ego immediately grabs and says, oh, if I choose the Holy Spirit, my illusion is going to change. No. The result is the inner peace that you can experience right now if you let go of your interpretations, of your judgment. And the moment you keep practicing, now going back to your question, anger comes up. The mind is already figuring out, oh, what is the cause? What is the cause? No, the cause of your anger is you believe you're a body. You believe you're separate from yourself. That's the only cause. That's the universal cause. That's about it. So the ego says, the cause of my anger is that person did this, or this is happening. This is how the ego keeps you trapped, right? But even when you're trying to go back to the cause, I'm not at peace. I'm still feeling the anger. I'm going crazy trying to figure out why I feel this way, But if I surrender to what is, I said, okay, anger or sensation appears. But look how I'm feeling, even for that brief moment when I surrender. So I keep practicing that. And as a result of that practice, then I realize, okay, now the only right choice in every experience is going back to this space. And then, before you even know it, where did the anger go? But if I keep hanging on to it, because again, there's a strong identification with this I.
Because I noticed this kind of going back and forth thing.
Of course, and will always be.
Surrendering, and next day is the same thing. Right?
Exactly. So until you realize, you know what, I don't even care if I'm angry or not, I just want to be at peace. In reality, that's all we want. It's like I think that the peace and the happiness, I'll find it in what I do, in what I have, But now, I just want peace of mind. And if I really want peace as the most important thing, then all these things will come up, because that's how the ego thought system, the resistance keeps showing up. This part in the Course in Miracles talks about that, when it talks about the moment the idea of yourself begins to change to what the Holy Spirit has about you, the ego thought system becomes enraged. And that's when some people sometimes feel like a dark night of the soul, and oh my God, what's happening? Nothing is happening. What's happening is that you're looking at your own resistance. Because letting go it's simple. But again, I don't want to let go because I have a belief, or all sorts of belief, of what thing may happen to me if I let go. I spend my whole life building this ego. I spend my whole life building this I. And you're telling me that I have to now let go of everything I worked so hard for? Imagine if you're a scientist, a physicist, right? And you went to MIT University or England State of Technology, the best university there is, and you pay a lot of money for it, and then all of a sudden you come with all this this information, and you're learning all that kind of stuff, and then you had your mastery, and then you had your doctorate and all that stuff, and you have spent all this time so you can put on your door, I am such and such physicist, PhD, whatever, and all of a sudden somebody tells you that means nothing. Are you nuts? However, the time comes when it's not about the title, it's about I am tired of continually feeling fear. And then thought system of love says, you don't have to let go of the title. It's no big deal. That's just a game you're playing here. Don't identify with it as you. And now you can play the game of being the doctor, but you know it means nothing. And if for some reason that game no longer fits you, you say, okay, well, I learned all this stuff. That's what I had to go through, and I got my title, but I realized that now I can drop it. You know? Because now you're not identified yourself with the labels. And that's how you can live in the world as if you're still playing the game, but being consciously aware that you're not of the world. You know? That's the balance. But the balance at the beginning, it seems very scary because I'm very attached to who I think I am. You know? That's why, but don't worry. You let it go. That's why the Course says, if you want to be like me, I'll teach you, knowing that you and I are the same. Not I'm better than you or whatever. We're the same. But if you want to keep playing the game, go ahead. I'll wait until you change your mind. Because it knows that you're going to be running in circles. Finally, the happiness and the peace that finally we've been seeking in the world is what you are. That's why I couldn't find it, because I was too busy seeking it. You know? So now you're looking at all the obstacles showing up and trust. This is a process of trust. It's a surrendering process.
Thank you.
You're over here, somebody?
Well, shouldn't we try to forgive all the time? Like, if you get in a state where you're angry, shouldn't you be trying to forgive instead of letting be?
Good question. The word that I would stay away from is should, because there's no shoulds or shouldn't. It's very simple. If you don't forgive, you suffer, and if you forgive, you don't. You know. There's a beautiful, there's a beautiful book. If you have a chance to read it, is Don't Forget to Laugh, the story of Bill Thetford. And the reason why I really like that book is because I was able to connect with him as a human being practicing the Course. You know, he was actually, you can look, and there's one, Carol Howe tells a story that he says that some lady was very upset with Gerald Jampolsky or something for whatever reason, and she calls Bill Thetford, and he was listening to her, and she goes, I have this anger and blah 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 blah, and then he said something along the lines, do you want to see him innocent? And she goes, no, I don't think it's whatever. He says, well, whenever you want to see him as innocent, you'll feel much better. And he hung up. You know? So in reality, there's no shoulds or shouldn't. It's just very common sense. Look how you feel when you're in judgment, and look how you feel when the judgment is dropped. Now, there's a transition process, because when I'm in judgment, there's a lot of resistance. That's my guilt. That's the judgment that I feel towards God, because supposedly He's the one who pushed me away from the kingdom, when in reality the prodigal son was not pushed from the kingdom. He just wanted to live on its own. So my anger towards God is really a reflection of my anger towards other people. So in a sense, when I'm angry towards anyone, I'm really angry to God, not to anybody else. I just want to make you the victimizer, so that God might be more, have more mercy on me. But it's ridiculous. So whatever anger I feel towards someone else, which is nothing but anger towards me, because in the end it's only one, is a representation of the anger that I feel towards God. The Holy Spirit is trying to tell me, hey, relax, you're still in bed, nothing happened. That's why the Holy Spirit is the correction. Because he can see the dream but doesn't believe in it. He says, hey, the only problem is your attention is where it's not. Bring it back here. And how do I do so? How do I forgive my brother? You cannot forgive your brother because, first of all, you think you're a person. Now you think there is a brother. And now the one who's trying to tell you that you should forgive your brother is the ego. You should not forgive anything because there's nothing to forgive, because nothing happened. But because I believe that I'm here, the best thing I can do is surrender. And remember that there's a beautiful line in the Course that stays in chapter 14, in section 11, that says, when your peace is disturbed in any way, shape, or form, simply do this, or say this, I do not know the meaning of anything, including this. Therefore, I do not know how to respond to it, and I will not allow the past to be the light that guide me now. Which is the same thing as I don't know anything. You know?
Yeah, I've been doing that, but
You've been doing that because I want a change.
Yeah.
I've been doing that because I want to feel better.
Yeah.
Which is the same question he had. No difference. Mm-hmm. The thing is that a situation might have occurred, and you feel the effect of that. And you think that the effect of that is caused by this. And now what we do is try to hang over to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, get rid of this. I'm in resistance to what is. The Holy Spirit is not asking you to get rid of anything. He's saying just relax. Because once again, love does not push anything. Love is total acceptance. And if I want to be in contact with the love that I am, I cannot be in resistance of anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I know this can be very unsettling. Because but look at my situation. It's no different. If you want to be in love, you must then be in a space, in an open space, and that's how the Holy Spirit teaches you how to look at it differently. Now that which at the beginning appears to be an attack on yourself, now from the right-minded thinking is a call for love. Now you don't see your brother attacking you. You see a part of your mind that is saying, help me. I forgot who I am. Please don't you forget who I am. You see, even when the person is telling you the most awful words you can possibly think, there's a part of you that is looking at the Son of God innocent, because you're connecting with your innocent, not because I'm trying to do so. You see, that's the trap. We're trying to do so from here. Okay, my brother is innocent. Meanwhile, I'm seething. No, I'm fooling myself. The best thing to do, if anything, is just get out of there right now. And maybe work what I have to go through. Maybe I feel like telling you, mother, whatever, and then say it, but don't to them. Because you're letting it go. But meanwhile, while you might be saying that, there's a part of you that says, I know, and this is the thing, I know that you're not the cause of what I'm feeling. And I know that you were placed here for the reason so that I can look at my own anger. And then something in you shift. And at the beginning was, I hate you, and now turns into thank you. Because had it not been for this encounter, I could not have been able to see the anger that I was in here before I even met you. And if I don't deal with it now, it's going to come up somewhere else. So that's why we're becoming very conscious, you're paying attention. Oof, look at all the stuff that is coming up. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. There's it doesn't have to be this way, though, but it's an analogy. In military in the United States, there's an old phrase, thank you, sir, give me another. Meaning that when they're hitting, when the sergeant is hitting you, thank you, sir, give me another. Of course, that is taken in the wrong context. In the context of, bring me more punishment. No. What it's saying is that if you look at it from this context, is that whenever fear comes up, it's a way of saying, thank you, because you're helping me see my blocks to the awareness of God. Doesn't mean I have to put up with the behavior. Doesn't mean that I have to agree with the behavior. But it certainly means that if I have to walk away from that experience, I walk away without any judgment or any attack thoughts towards that person. Simply, everybody's doing their own thing the best they can. But I can only become aware of that if I'm willing to choose the Holy Spirit. And that's, again, I cannot tell you how it will be for anybody. For me, hasn't been easy. Because I really had to look. Ken Wapnick used to say, if you haven't felt like throwing the book A Course in Miracles a couple of times against the wall, probably you're not doing it right.
But what do I do with the Holy Spirit?
You're not doing anything with the Holy Spirit. You are already doing it with the Holy Spirit when you drop your own interpretations. You see? Because again, it's not you, the person, who's choosing the Holy Spirit. There's no you. You see, this is not easy to grab. This is the cause of a lot of resistance, In reality, the problem is in the mind. There's a decision maker in between the two, supposedly. And I already established there's no two. So I don't do anything. Nick Arandes doesn't hand anything to the Holy Spirit because there's no Holy Spirit to hand it over to. Nick Arandes simply observe what is drop his own interpretations of what is, and that is the equivalent of choosing the Holy Spirit, because now I am in right-mindedness position. Does that make sense?
Mhm.